From Lockport Community Television, stories from around Western New York that affect your life. This is Studio One with Joanna Torreano.
Welcome to Studio One. I'm your host, Joanna Torreano, and today I have with me Ann Liaros, who is originally from here but is presently living in Florida and it is here for a while. She is a psychic, and today we're going to be discussing, what is a psychic, what is a medium, what is a psychic medium, if you have a reading, what you can expect. For 28 minutes, we're going to be talking about all of this, and thank you very much, Ann, for coming in today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a nice day, even though it's going to be hot, but
beautiful.
Yes, we're getting used to that. Let's start from the very beginning and explain to the audience, what is a psychic?
A psychic is someone who psychic ability works through the senses. In other words, a psychic will see something, hear something, feel something, smell something, or taste something. So psychic ability works through the senses. So when I say in a reading, well, I'm seeing you do such and such, okay? It's like I'm seeing this in my imagination, in my mind, just like if I would say to you, what does your living room look like? Well, you can conjure that up through, memory, but it's in the same process, the same way. And so a psychic works through senses.
So when you do a reading, are you predicting the future?
That's what I tend to be most accurate in my readings. Every psychic has a specialty. Mm-hmm. Some psychics are very good at psychic diagnosing, we call it. Others telling you things about relationships. Others, like me, precognition is one of the things that I'm most accurate in. When I was at Rosary Hill College, which is now Damon College, working in the Human Dimensions Institute, which was housed at Rosary Hill, they did a 2-year experiment with me on precognition. And I was found to be 93 to 97% accurate when predicting the future. So that's why most people come to me, is they know about their past.
Right,
so they
it's already happened.
They want to know about their future,
right.
Whether it be relationship, whether it be finances, whether it be their job, whether it be they're working on themselves and want to change and improve and so on. But it's usually about the future.
Mm-hmm. What if you see something that is not so good? How do you handle that? Do you tell the people? Do you not tell the people?
Well, that's such an ambiguous question.
Okay.
Because what is not good for you might be A-okay for me.
Okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So people say, don't tell me anything negative. Well, when I look back over my life, many of the negative things that have happened to me are the ones that have made me the person I am, and I like who I am. Mm-hmm. So what is negative? Some people say death is negative. Yet when I give a reading, and should they ask about someone who's going to pass on and so on, the way I always see death is the person is younger, they're dancing through a field of flowers, the sun is shining, so that's how I see death. Well, that doesn't sound negative to me.
Right.
You see,
right.
It's such a broad question, that's hard to answer. It depends upon what the situation is and who the person is I'm reading for. Although in my readings, for some reason, I tend to get the positive things. And even if I get the negative, I will try and see beyond whatever's going on to how can you deal with that beforehand, or how can you deal with that better after. So it all depends.
Okay. Define medium to me. I understand what a psychic is. What's a medium?
Yeah. A medium is someone who purports to be able to see and or hear spirits of people who have passed on. For example, they'll say, Joanna, your father's here and he's telling me. Or the medium has a guide, and the guide will take them over and speak through them and give you messages from people who have passed on. Then there are other mediums who also have, like way back years ago, Ramtha was the big rage. And that was a 25,000-year-old spiritual being who spoke through Jay-Z Night. And so that was her guide, someone who had never been on the earth. So it's very, broad, but it has to do with spirits. It has to do with the spirits who have passed on, conveying messages in some way to the person who's come for the reading. And that's not what I do.
Okay. what type of training do you have? Like, were you born, I mean, with this, or did you, I mean, did you wake up one day and say, I can do this? Tell me a little bit about your background.
That's a very good question, because some psychics say they were born with it, and they, you know, ever since they were young, they made predictions. Others have had some kind of an accident where they banged their head in some way, very severely, and suddenly they woke up psychic. In my case, I didn't discover it until I was 29, when I went to a psychic for a reading, and he told me how psychic I was, and I was going to travel and teach other people how to develop their psychic ability. I was going to work with men in white coats like doctors or scientists, and I was going to write a book. So he made me do a reading for a woman who was waiting for him, you know, reading from him. And so after that, daily things began to happen. But before that, I had never had a psychic experience.
Wow. So it was going to a psychic that introduced you to your own.
That's correct, yes.
And to your
I
own
had
power.
no idea. Because at that time, I believed it was a gift that some people had and the rest of us did not. So, of course, I didn't believe I had psychic ability.
Tell us about some of the things that you have done, like with movies and with police officers, and tell us a little bit about that.
Well, as I mentioned to you before we started this morning, I was in a movie with Edgar Mitchell. In fact, I had made a prediction about that.
Wow.
One day when I was at Rosary Hill, and I was waiting for someone to come in as part of an experiment, and I held my own poncho, because I do psychometry, which is holding an object that belongs to someone else. And I made myself believe that this wasn't mine. And I saw a picture of myself from this angle, and I thought, oh, I'm going to be in the newspaper, which I'd been in before. But then I noticed it was in color, and way back then, this was in '72, you know, newspapers weren't in color.
Right.
And then I noticed my mouth was moving, so I thought, I'm going to be in a movie. And then I thought, I wonder when? And I heard September, October. And then I heard the words A-OK, like the astronauts say. Now, this was in, I believe, February. Well, in September, a woman by the name of Elda Hartley came up to the college to film some work that Sister Justa was doing on healing with a healer. And she went to the different classes, and she chose mine to come back and film for this movie, Inner Spaces. So I was having lunch with Elda, and I said, well, I made this prediction, you know, I said you'd be back and so on. And I even knew the angle that the cameraman was going to choose because of my, you know, reading. I said, but I got something that has nothing to do with the movie. And she said, oh, what's that? I said, I heard the words A-OK, like the astronauts say. And she said, well, you don't know who's going to be in the movie. Narrating it is Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon. So I said, oh, I see. And I've done work with the police. This is work I don't like doing. I don't like it at all. If it's a robbery or something like that. But when I was in Florida several years ago, I don't know if you remember the Adam Walsh case,
Yes.
where he was kidnapped from Sears, and I worked on that, and afterwards I went to bed for 3 days. I was just completely wiped out. So I don't like to do that kind of work. But I did do some work for Leo Donovan, who used to be the head of homicide here in Buffalo, New York, and worked on cases. If they're robberies, something like that, what I do in those cases is I pretend in my imagination, because imagination is so powerful in psychic work. I pretended to get into the body of the perpetrator. And so I'm looking at the world through their eyes, I'm hearing the world through their ears, I'm feeling the impact of the world on them and their reaction to it. So then what I do is I will do things like I'll look at my hands. What do my hands look like? And I'll touch my hair. I'm the perpetrator. How long is my hair? Like with Adam Walsh, I felt this greasy, stringy hair down to about the shoulder, well, just below the neck actually, and these skinny, long fingers with dirty fingernails. And then I pretended to walk over to the mirror and look in the mirror, and what color eyes do I have, and what is the shape of my face, and do I have any facial hair, and do I wear glasses? So I get a description that way of the perpetrator.
It's fascinating.
It is, but anyone can do it. That's what I teach in my workshops, is how to do that kind of thing.
Okay, and that's where I want to go right now, because if you're listening and you're in the area, Carol Ann is going to be offering classes And do you want to speak about the Saturday classes first, the consecutive?
Okay, I'm doing a lecture series that begins September 10th from 10:30 in the morning till noon at my Garden of Healing in Alcott, which is the very end of Route 78. You get to the end of Route 78, you look to your left, and there's this colorful building, and that's where it will be. And each week I cover a different subject. For example, one of the weeks I cover auras, this energy that emanates from us, and I describe what it is and what the colors mean and so on. And another week I'll talk about remote viewing or traveling clairvoyance or mind traveling, some people call it. And that's where we're able to be in one place and describe a place where we've never been. And the blind people that I've worked with are particularly good at that, very good at that, as a matter of fact. So each week I'm doing a different lecture on a different subject with questions and answers. And people can come for the 4 weeks, or they can come for just 1 week, whatever they prefer. Then I'm doing a workshop September 25th from 10 till 4, which is very experiential. You know, you'll be pairing off with people, you'll be tuning into them in the way I describe and getting feedback, and it's fun, and people are just astonished at how well they do. Well, you have my book, and you tried one of the experiments in my book and said how well you did. So, yeah, so that's the kind of fun we have in the workshop. Very fun learning experience.
So if anyone's interested in taking the classes, what do they need to do?
They need to call my office, which is 876-4414. And Kathy, my assistant, will give them more information, register them, or they can show up on the day of the either lecture or the workshop and pay at the door.
What about parking? Is parking proper?
There's a lot of parking.
Yeah, I know that's one of my fears when I go somewhere. Say, okay,
plenty
now
of
what am I going to do?
Right there.
Right there, right. Okay, so that is classes beginning September 10th, then there's September 17th, the 24th, and then October 1st. And if you're interested in the September 25th one, that's from 10 to 4, and that's when there's going to be, you're going to be experimenting and doing things under your direction.
Correct.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about the different terminology. We have clairvoyance, clairaudience, I don't even know how to say the other one.
Clairsentience.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I don't even know what any of that means, so tell me about that.
Well, that's what I was talking about before that a psychic does. Clairsentience, for example, is a French word that means clear feeling. And many people in your audience, and you too probably have said, I don't know what it is, but I just have a feeling this is going to happen. That's clairsentience. Clairvoyance is the seeing part. It's a French word that means clear seeing. So when you say, well, like when I say I see something, I'm seeing it, but inside of my head. But it's the seeing part of the psychic process. And then clairaudience is clear hearing. So you hear, like you have my book, and when I signed your book, I heard what to write. Or sometimes when I'm giving a reading, I'll say, what connection do you have with Spain? Because I'll hear Spain, but I won't get any other information, just Spain. So, you know, so that's clairaudience. And I don't know if they've manufactured any words for the smelling part and the tasting part. But many people that will come up to me after a lecture and say, you know, whenever someone in my family is going to die, I'll smell roses or lilies or something. And many times tasting is involved too. When I worked for an allergist, what I got that this child was allergic to was a mound of white stuff on the table. And so the doctor said to me, well, you know, that's not useful. Think of what's white, flour, sugar, da, da, da. So I thought, well, how can I tell what it is? And then in my imagination, I pretended to lick my finger, touch it, and taste it. And I said, this child is very allergic to salt, which I had never heard of, but it's not me I was reading for. And so these senses are very involved in the psychic process, as different than with mediumship.
I see that. Okay, we're going to take a little bit of a break. We will be back with Carol Ann, and we'll talk again about the workshops in case you missed the first part. So stay tuned.
Adventure can be found anywhere, but the best place to start is in the forest.
I spy something beginning with S.
Snow?
No.
Snow-covered trees.
Nothing to do with snow.
Head outside to discover incredible animals and beautiful plants that come together to create an unforgettable adventure.
Wow.
So grab your loved ones
Don't even.
and explore a world of possibilities.
Come on, this way.
Visit discovertheforest.org to find the closest forest or park to you.
My poetry is about viewing the world as I saw it as a young man, and down to the ages I continued to write verse. I used that as a creative expression, but it also helped me through life because I could address certain issues, certain feelings, and certain appreciations. I'm a retired school psychologist, and helping people was my thing. After my stroke, when Meals on Wheels started, I was on the other end of the stick, so to speak, and suddenly I realized I was there where those other people were. My name is Julius Gaines, creative writer, poet, photographer. America, let's do lunch.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation. Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Hamilton was adopted from a rescue in 2008. He really likes to be around people. And as soon as I start to make my breakfast, Hamilton is right there. I get out my mat and I'm doing a downward dog and he's underneath. He's quite the pug about town. He gets invited to a lot of parties. He knows he's a pretty big deal. I mean, look at this little face. How could you not love him?
Welcome back. I'm with Ann Liaros, who is a psychic, and we're talking about the workshop she's going to be offering in Alcott, New York at My Garden of Healing that starts September 10th and runs for 4 consecutive Saturdays. And then there's also the Exploring Your Own Psychic Intuitive Gifts, which is September 25th, and it's 10 to 4. Which that's when people really get into and start doing things.
Yes, because the 4 weeks is actually a lecture series.
Okay, all right. Let's talk about your books first. You've written 2 books,
Yes.
and talk a little bit about those and where they can be purchased if anyone's interested.
Yes, the one is the 7 Keys for Unlocking Your Intuition, and I wrote that so that someone could take it, and if they had a study group or a meditation group or something, and they wanted to, explore their psychic ability, in that book is how to feel psychic energy, how to do aura scanning, how to do remote viewing, how to do healing, what's the other one? How to do psychometry, etc. So it's a how-to book, really. And so people could take that. I actually have the script, like when I talk, when I go through a relaxation, that's in that book. So it's really jam-packed with a lot of really good information. And then about, 2 or 3 years ago, I received a call from Kevin Tedeschi, who's the CEO of the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and Enlightenment in Virginia Beach, Virginia. And most people have heard of Edgar Cayce. And he wanted to know if I was interested in writing a book with him on auras in color. And I said, oh yeah, that'd be great. So he and I co-authored the book on Edgar Cayce on auras in color. And again, gives information how to see an aura, how to scan an aura, why you would want to do that, what the colors mean, etc. So it's a very, again, a how-to book. Yeah.
It's nice to have how-to books.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those can be purchased at My Garden of Healing in Alcott.
Okay. What are the hours of My Garden of Healing? Do you know?
From Wednesday through Friday, from noon till 6, and then over the weekend from noon till 8.
Okay, so she's closed Monday, Tuesday.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
and the phone number there is 807-5354.
Okay. Now, if somebody was interested in having a reading, tell me, what do they have to do before they even come to you?
Okay, well, what Kathy will tell them to do, because she schedules all my readings last a half an hour. People can schedule an hour, but you'd be surprised how much we can cover in a half an hour if the person is prepared.
Okay.
What I do is psychometry, okay? I take an object that belongs to the person, and making sure that no one else has worn it or used it for any length of time, so I don't get them instead of, you, for example. And write down their list of questions, what they want to know about, because sometimes when I'm doing the reading, they forget. So I only suggest they write the questions down so they won't forget what they want to ask about. If they have questions about anyone else, if they have a photograph or an object or a sample of the person's writing, anything that has their energy on it, to bring that along. If not, quite often I can get that from their name. I can actually tune in from their name. So when they arrive, then they're all prepared. And what happens is I will take an object that belongs to the person, or I'll have them write something on a piece of paper, because you put your energy into the paper, and I'll touch that object or that handwriting, and usually I work with my eyes closed, because I don't want to see your reaction and whether you're saying yes or no or whatever. And I'll talk and tell you whatever it is I get, and I never know if it'll be about your past, present, future, internal things, physical problems or what, but it's usually about the future. And then I'll stop talking after I don't know how many minutes, and then I'll say, okay, now let's switch to your questions. Now you may have questions about what I said, or you may want to go right to your questions. We cover your questions, and as I said, the reading lasts a half an hour. But I don't waste a lot of time. In my field, I'm known as the meat and potatoes psychic.
I think that's a good thing.
Because some psychics, and I've been to them, will say, well, your aura is this many colors, and it reaches up into the clouds, and that tells me that you're da-da-da-da-da. Well, I don't waste time with that.
Yeah.
Because we have a half an hour. We can get a lot done in a half an hour. And so then I finish the reading, and I really encourage people to record it, because some people tend to hear what they want to hear, not what I actually said. And so when they get home and they listen to the recording, they'll hear that. And how you ask the question is important. I really should teach a little workshop on that, because, someone will say, will I marry Bill? That might be a different question than, should I marry Bill?
Oh, yes.
Right? So how you ask the question can be very important, because how you ask it that's what elicits a response from me. Yes, you're going to marry Bill. Now, if they ask, is it going to be happy or whatever, then, But other than that, I will answer exactly how you ask it.
Okay.
So that's how a reading goes.
So a person has to be prepared and not just show up and say, okay, talk to me.
Well, I can do that, but they'll get much more out of the half an hour if they come prepared.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Because after I've stopped talking, and I'll say, now we'll switch to questions, they sit there and think, well, what do I want to know? What would I like to know? And they're so confused, or something I've said, or they're so excited that they can't think straight.
Right.
So I can do that. I have done that.
Right.
But you can get more out of a half an hour by being prepared.
Okay. You mentioned, how do you say,
Psychometry.
Psychometry. Explain that, so let's say this pen, obviously this pen's been handled by many people, but so you would just hold the pen and
yes.
And you would close your eyes?
Yeah, I close my eyes because I don't want to be distracted by your reaction, because if you look quizzical and I'm looking for sensory cues, I better go in a different direction. Some people might do that.
Okay.
But anyway, think about DNA. Everything you touch, you leave your DNA on. You leave your DNA on your keys, you leave your DNA on that pen, you leave your DNA on that chair. Everything you touch, you leave your DNA. Well, your aura or energy field is like that. Everywhere you go, everything you touch, you leave some of that auric energy on that. Like when I get up from this chair, another psychic could sit down and give a reading on me by saying, I want to, tune into Carol Ann, the last one who sat here, and could give me a reading. So that aura is a sum total of who you are, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, contains the frequency of all of your past experiences and your unconscious, where you've made decisions about your future. So the psychic tunes into that energy of your aura and then interprets the energy from what they get. So it's very important that the object not have been worn for any length of time by somebody else. Like, many times mothers have teenage daughters, and their daughters, they borrow each other's clothes or jewelry, for example. And I might end up, if the other person is a stronger personality than the person who wants the reading, I may read for the other person. So it's very important that the object be only yours. If you're not sure, I have you write, as I said, because when you write, you put your energy on the paper. Paper is only your energy. So that's what psychometry is.
I know you said that, this started when you were 29, but then did you take classes?
No.
So you just have
Yeah.
developed this on your own? You must have read books or?
Well, yes, I've been reading books about psychic things since I was 12 because I was always fascinated by it. But I tried everything. For example, when I was at the college, they'd say, let's have you try and read the handwriting, for example. And yet I'm not a handwriting analyst, so I would just touch it. Let's try it with metal things. Let's try it with cotton. Let's try this. They even gave me phone numbers, a phone number, and said, tell us about the person who has that phone number now, because more than likely, someone else had had it.
Right.
So as soon it's like tuning into a radio station or something, you fine tune it. Okay, the person who has this telephone number now. So that focus and that intent and that concentration is important. And then I would do the reading. We found it worked. And then I tried doing a reading on someone just from their name, although age somehow helps me too. So we found that all these things work. So I was experimenting with my own abilities to see how limited is it, how unlimited is it. And so I really sort of trained myself, so to speak. And then the scientists were very good at giving me feedback. And the feedback showed me many times what I'm more accurate at and what I'm less accurate at. If you have a lost object, don't call me. Don't call me.
Can't find it, right?
I can't find lost objects. That just isn't my thing.
If you're interested in any of this, there's workshops that are going to be held at My Garden of Healing, which is located at 5860 Main Street. The lecture series starts September 10th, runs for 4 consecutive Saturdays. There's also a workshop starting September 25th from 10 to 4 p.m. It's also held at My Garden of Healing. You can go to the website, mygardenofhealing.com. Did you want to add something?
Yes, it's at Main Street, Alcott, New York.
Thank you.
Not Buffalo, New York.
Okay. Oh, that's a good point.
Yes.
Yes. And there's plenty of parking. There's plenty of parking. Well, thank you very much for coming on. This was really interesting.
It was my pleasure.
And I hope to see people at the lecture series and the workshop. Thank you.